The restaurant lights reflected off the rain-streaked windows when the old security guard touched my elbow and said 4 words that split my life in half. "Is that your wife?" His voice was low, careful, almost apologetic, like a man carrying bad news he wished belonged to someone else. I looked up from the anniversary gift bag in my hand, confused at first. My wife, Celeste, had just walked ahead toward the elevators inside the Grand Mercer Hotel, while I waited near the lobby cafe with the flowers and reservations confirmation in my pocket. 10 years married. 10 years of birthdays, mortgages, school pickups, late-night arguments about bills, and whispered promises in the dark after our kids fell asleep. I thought tonight was supposed to save us. Not because we were broken exactly, but because lately it felt like we were speaking through glass. Smiling on the outside, distant underneath. The guard stood beside me in his faded navy uniform, gray mustache twitching nervously. "Come with me," he whispered again. "You need to see this yourself." Something cold moved through my stomach. Not suspicion. Instinct. The kind that arrives before your brain catches up. I followed him down a side corridor past the ballroom entrance and through a restricted hallway that smelled faintly like bleach and old carpet. He used a key card to open a small security office tucked behind the elevators. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. For surveillance, monitors glowed against the wall. And on the center screen, I saw my wife. My beautiful wife. Laughing. Leaning against the mirrored wall outside the executive suites. Her hand resting on the chest of another man. Not just any man. Her boss. Adrian Mercer. 52 years old. CEO smile. Tailored suits. Expensive watches. The kind of man who shook hands like he was already bored of you. I had met him twice at corporate dinners. Both times he looked at me the way rich men sometimes look at working men. Polite, dismissive, temporary. On the monitor, Celeste touched his tie and smiled in a way I had not seen in years. Then he kissed her. Slow, familiar, intimate enough to tell me this was not the first time. My ears started ringing. The old guard glanced toward me carefully like he expected violence. But I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe properly. I just stared at the screen while my marriage collapsed in complete silence. "I'm sorry," the guard muttered quietly. "I saw you two coming together downstairs. Figured you deserved the truth before they disappeared upstairs." Upstairs. My stomach twisted harder. On the screen, Damien slipped a key card from his pocket. Penthouse level. My wife leaned close to his ear and laughed again. Then the elevator doors opened and they stepped inside together. Gone. Just like that. The room felt smaller suddenly. Hotter. I realized my fists were clenched so tight my nails had cut into my palms. The guard offered me a chair. I ignored it. My reflection in the dark security monitor barely looked familiar anymore. My name is Adrian Vale. I'm 43 years old, and until that moment I thought loyalty guaranteed safety. I thought if you worked hard enough, stayed faithful enough, sacrificed enough, eventually life rewarded you with stability. But betrayal doesn't care how loyal you were. It only cares how blind you chose to be. The guard cleared his throat awkwardly. "You okay?" No, I wasn't okay. But something strange happened instead of rage. Rage would have been easier, cleaner. Instead, my mind became terrifyingly calm, like a switch flipped somewhere deep inside me. Every missed call, every late meeting, every work emergency, every sudden gym membership and secret smile at her phone rearranged themselves into one ugly picture I should have seen months ago. And the worst part? She had kissed me goodbye an hour earlier before we left home. "Tonight is going to be special," she told me. She already knew with who. I walked out of the security office slowly, thanking the guard with a voice that barely sounded human. He looked confused by how calm I was. But calm men are dangerous when they've lost everything emotionally. I stepped outside into the cold March rain, carrying the anniversary flowers I bought for a woman who no longer existed. I sat inside my truck for nearly 20 minutes staring at the hotel entrance while rain hammered the windshield. Then I did something that changed the rest of the story forever. I didn't drive home. I didn't confront her. I didn't call screaming. Instead, I opened my contacts and called someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 3 years. "Ethan," I said when he answered, "I need a favor." Silence. Then his voice sharpened instantly. "What happened?" Ethan Cole used to work cybercrimes before leaving the department for private intelligence consulting. We served together overseas years ago before life split us into different worlds. He knew my voice well enough to recognize when something inside me had broken. "My wife is cheating on me," I said quietly while watching the glowing hotel windows. And I need to know how deep this goes. Another pause. Then only 4 words came back to the phone. Tell me everything. And as I stared up at the penthouse lights where my wife disappeared with another man on our 10th anniversary, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't the beginning of the affair. It was only the beginning of what I was about to uncover. Ethan arrived 43 minutes later, wearing a black rain jacket and the same unreadable expression he used to wear overseas before missions went bad. He climbed into my truck without asking questions first, just looked at the hotel entrance glowing across the wet parking lot, and said quietly, "How certain are you?" I handed him my phone. The security guard had emailed me 2 screenshots from the surveillance system before his shift supervisor noticed. In the first image, Celeste stood against a mirrored wall, touching Damian Mercer's tie. In the second, they were kissing beside the elevator. Ethan studied both photos carefully, then handed the phone back without reacting emotionally. That was Ethan's gift. He never let emotion interfere with pattern recognition. "How long you think this has been happening?" he asked. I laughed once under my breath. Bitter. Hollow. Long enough that she stopped being careful. Rain drummed harder against the windshield. Across the street, luxury cars slid silently through puddles while wealthy couples disappeared into restaurants under umbrellas. Somewhere above us, my wife was probably drinking expensive wine with another man, while the flowers I bought for her sat dying in my passenger seat. Ethan leaned back quietly. "You want revenge?" he said. It wasn't a question. I stared at the hotel windows. "No," I answered after a long pause. "I want the truth first." He nodded slowly like that answer mattered, because it did. Revenge without truth is emotion. Truth first becomes strategy. Ethan pulled a laptop from his bag and opened it right there inside the truck. Then let's start with Mercer. Within minutes, he had Damian Mercer's corporate profile on screen. CEO of Mercer Biodine Technologies. Estimated net worth north of $60 million. Married once. Divorced twice. No children. Multiple shell companies. Several properties. Public reputation spotless. But Ethan didn't care about public information. He cared about cracks. "Interesting," he murmured. "What?" He turned the screen toward me. His executive assistant resigned last year after filing a sealed workplace complaint. My jaw tightened. Sealed for what? Unknown. NDA attached. He kept typing. "And your wife started working directly under Mercer 8 months later." Something cold settled deeper into my chest. 8 months. My mind instantly replayed everything from that time frame. Celeste suddenly changing her wardrobe. Her late nights becoming constant. The secret of texting. The emotional distance she blamed on stress. God, I had apologized to her during half those arguments. Ethan opened another database and frowned slightly. "Adrian, there's more." "What?" "Mercer's company has internal ethics investigations buried under corporate arbitration. Quiet settlements. Female employees." I stared at him. "You think he manipulated her?" Ethan shook his head carefully. "I think rich men like Mercer don't suddenly change patterns in their 50s. My phone buzzed suddenly against the console. Celeste. I watched her name glow on the screen, while my heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. That scared me more than anger would have. I answered calmly. "Hey!" Her voice sounded soft, warm, practiced. "Baby, I'm so sorry." The client dinner went way longer than expected. Client dinner. I closed my eyes briefly. "It's okay," I said. Ethan glanced sideways at me silently. "You still awake?" she asked. "Yeah. I might stay at Hannah's tonight. We had wine and honestly I'm exhausted." "Hannah," another lie added smoothly onto the pile. "No problem," I replied. "Drive safe." "Love you," she whispered gently. 14 years together, and she could still say those words without trembling. "Love you too," I answered automatically before hanging up. The silence afterward felt poisonous. Ethan watched me carefully. "You okay?" "No," I admitted quietly. "But I'm learning." He shut the laptop halfway. "Adrian, once we start pulling this thread, there's no going back." I looked at the hotel penthouse windows again. I think she already made sure of that. We drove home separately around midnight. The house was dark, except for the kitchen light. She always left on. I walked inside slowly, hearing only the hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the hallway clock. Family photos lined the walls. Beach vacations. Christmas mornings. School graduations. Smiling memories that suddenly looked staged. I stood in front of one picture for almost a minute. Celeste laughing against my shoulder at our anniversary trip 3 years earlier. Looking at it now felt like staring at strangers. Upstairs, our daughter Ava slept curled beneath pink blankets, while our son Mason snored softly with headphones still around his neck. I stood in their doorways longer than necessary, because betrayal hits differently when children are sleeping under your roof. Suddenly, this wasn't only about heartbreak. It became about protection, stability, survival. I sat alone in the kitchen until nearly 2 in the morning before headlights finally swept across the driveway. Celeste walked in carrying designer heels in one hand and her purse in the other. She froze, slightly seeing me awake. Just 1 second. One tiny second. But it was enough. "You're still up?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Couldn't sleep?" She leaned down and kissed my forehead carefully. The same lips that had kissed another man hours earlier. "I missed you tonight," she whispered. I looked directly into her eyes for the first time since the hotel surveillance footage. And what terrified me most was this. I could no longer tell when she was acting and when she was real. "Me too," I said quietly. She smiled sadly and disappeared upstairs toward the shower. 30 seconds later, her phone buzzed inside her purse sitting beside the kitchen counter. A message preview lit the screen before fading dark again. "Thank you for tonight. Already miss you." My hands remained perfectly still. That's when I understood something important. The affair itself wasn't the deepest betrayal anymore. The deepest betrayal was how comfortable she had become living 2 separate lives while eating breakfast beside me every morning. I memorized a message, memorized the time. Then I quietly opened my own phone and sent Ethan one line. "It's worse than we thought." His response came instantly. "Then stop thinking like a husband. Start thinking like an investigator." Upstairs, water ran to the shower pipes while steam filled the bathroom home we built together. And downstairs in the dark kitchen, I finally made a decision that would destroy everything Celeste thought she still controlled. The next morning, I made breakfast for my kids while my wife slept beside a secret I now carried better than she did. Mason argued with his sister over cereal. Ava asked if we could still go to the aquarium Saturday. Normal sounds. Normal life. And somehow that hurt more than the affair itself, because betrayal never arrives with dramatic music. It sits quietly at your kitchen table pretending everything is fine. Celeste finally came downstairs around 8, wearing one of my old college hoodies and loose gray sweatpants, looking exactly like the woman I had loved for 14 years. She kissed my cheek lightly while pouring coffee. "You okay?" she asked casually. "You seem tired." I almost laughed at the perfection of it. A cheating spouse asking if I looked exhausted after she spent the night with another man. "Just work stress," I answered calmly. Her shoulders relaxed immediately. "Tell me about it." "Mercer's been unbearable lately." "Mercer." She said his name with the exact same frustration she used whenever she needed him to sound harmless. I studied her quietly while she stirred cream into her coffee. Tiny details suddenly stood out everywhere. The expensive bracelet she claimed came from a team achievement dinner. The new perfume that definitely cost more than her salary should comfortably allow. The way she kept her phone face down automatically now. Once you see deception clearly, you realize the lies never actually hid. Love simply edited them for you. After dropping the kids at school, I drove directly to Ethan's office downtown. Calling an office barely fit. It occupied the second floor of an old brick building above a closed law firm, dimly lit with security monitors lining one wall and stacks of files covering every surface. Ethan was already working when I entered. "Sit," he said without looking up. A folder rested on the desk beside him. Thick, organized, dangerous. "Tell me you slept," he muttered. "Didn't happen." "Good. Fatigue makes people honest." He slid the folder toward me slowly. "This is Mercer." I opened it carefully. Corporate filings, financial reports, property records, private photos, hotel receipts. My stomach tightened harder with every page. Damian Mercer didn't just cheat casually. He built systems around secrecy. Shell companies paid for apartments. Confidential settlements buried complaints. Women rotated through his executive offices like seasonal employees. "Jesus," I whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. "Your wife isn't special to him, Adrian. She's part of a pattern." That should have comforted me somehow. Instead, it made everything uglier. Because if Celeste destroyed our marriage for a man like this, what did that say about us? Ethan leaned back in his chair. But here's where things change. He tapped one document specifically. "Mercer's company is under quiet federal review." I looked up instantly. "For what?" "Financial irregularities, internal fraud, misuse of investor funds." He paused. And your wife's name appears connected to multiple transfer authorizations. The room suddenly felt colder. No, I muttered automatically. Celeste handles scheduling and operations. She's not financial. Ethan gave me a long look. You sure? I thought about the expensive jewelry, the secretive behavior, the hidden confidence she suddenly carried over the past year. My certainty cracked slightly. Ethan opened another file and slid over printed bank statements. We traced transfers through Mercer-linked LLCs. One recurring account received monthly deposits for nearly 11 months. My eyes dropped to the account holder name. Celeste Vale. My throat went dry instantly. How much? Ethan's voice stayed level. Roughly $280,000 total. I stared at the numbers without blinking. My wife had secretly received nearly $300,000 while lying beside me every night. I couldn't even process it emotionally at first because my brain kept trying to rationalize impossible things. Maybe bonuses. Maybe legal consulting. Maybe Adrian. Ethan's tone cut through sharply. You know what this is? I did. I just didn't want to. My chest tightened painfully. Not from anger anymore. Humiliation. The kind that strips something fundamental out of a man. Because suddenly every overtime shift I worked, every budget conversation, every moment we discussed financial stress became grotesque in hindsight. She had hidden enough money to change our entire lives while pretending we were struggling together. Ethan watched me carefully. You still thinking like a husband? He said quietly. Stop. I looked away toward the rain streaking the office windows. We have kids, I muttered. Exactly, he replied immediately. Which means every decision from this point forward matters. Silence stretched between us. Then he slid over one final item. A photograph. My hands froze before even touching it. Celeste exiting a private condo building beside Mercer 3 weeks earlier. Time-stamped 11:42 p.m. Her hand resting comfortably on his back. Familiar. Intimate. Homelike. I stared at the image for so long my vision blurred slightly. Ethan finally spoke softer this time. I'm sorry. I nodded once but barely heard him, because something inside me was changing permanently now. The heartbreak was slowly burning away. In its place came clarity. Cold, methodical clarity. What do I do? I asked quietly. Ethan answered instantly. You protect yourself before she realizes you know. That day became the beginning of a war my wife didn't even realize it started yet. By noon, I met privately with the best divorce attorney in the city. By 3, forensic accountants began reviewing our joint finances. By 5, legal paperwork quietly froze several shared investment accounts before funds could disappear further. And by 7 that evening, I returned home carrying groceries while my wife stood in the kitchen helping Ava with homework like nothing in the world had changed. You're home early, she smiled. Same smile, same voice, same woman. But now I could see the machinery behind it, wrapped up faster than expected. I answered calmly. She walked over and kissed me lightly again. I wondered briefly if Mercer could still taste like wine on her lips. The thought no longer shattered me. It hardened me. During dinner, she laughed at Mason's jokes while texting under the table between bites. Probably him. Maybe not. Didn't matter anymore. Because while she believed she controlled the narrative, she had no idea I was already dismantling it piece by piece beneath her feet. Later that night, after the kids slept, she curled against me on the couch while watching television. You know, she whispered softly, maybe we should finally take that vacation this summer. Vacation. My God. Maybe, I replied quietly. She smiled against my shoulder. Comfortable, safe, confident. And in that exact moment, my phone buzzed silently inside my pocket. A message from Ethan. Urgent. Need to talk now. I excused myself calmly and stepped outside onto the dark back patio. Rain mist drifted across the yard while I answered immediately. Ethan's voice came sharp and low. Adrian, Mercer's wife just contacted me. I froze. Wife. Third wife, he corrected grimly. And according to her, your wife isn't the only employee sleeping with him. My heartbeat slowed dangerously. What are you saying? Ethan exhaled once. I'm saying this thing is about to become much bigger than an affair. 3 nights later, everything detonated. Not with screaming, not with broken dishes or dramatic confrontations like movies teach people to expect. Real destruction is quieter than that. Real destruction arrives organized, documented, signed in ink. Ethan arranged a meeting at a private conference suite overlooking downtown. Neutral territory where nobody could perform innocence comfortably. Celeste thought we were attending a couples counseling consultation. That was intentional. She arrived wearing a cream-colored coat and the diamond earrings I bought her on our 8th anniversary, smiling nervously, like maybe this was finally the conversation that would fix us. She still didn't know I had already seen the surveillance footage. She still believed the marriage was wounded, not dead. "You okay?" she asked softly while we rode the elevator up together. I looked at her reflection in the mirrored wall beside us. Beautiful, familiar, completely unreachable now. "I'm fine," I answered. The conference room doors opened. Ethan stood inside beside a long table covered with organized folders. Next to him sat my attorney, and across from them, already seated with crossed arms and perfectly controlled fury, was a woman I recognized immediately from business magazines. Vanessa Mercer, Damian Mercer's wife. Celeste stopped walking so abruptly her heels clicked sharply against the floor. Color drained from her face in seconds. "Adrian," she whispered. I held the chair out politely for her. "Sit down." She looked around the room, panic beginning to crack through her expression. "What is this?" Ethan slid a thick file toward her slowly. The truth. Her fingers trembled slightly before opening it. Photos first. Hotel records. Bank transfers. Condo access logs. Hidden accounts. Shell companies. Then came the financial records tied directly to Mercer's federal fraud investigation. Celeste's breathing changed instantly. Fast. Uneven. "You went through my accounts?" She whispered toward me. "No," I answered calmly. "Your lies did." Vanessa Mercer leaned forward coldly. "You're one of 4 employees my husband has been funneling money through." Celeste looked physically sick now. I didn't know about the others. Vanessa almost laughed. "Of course you didn't. Men like Damien survive by making every woman think she's the exception." Silence swallowed the room. Celeste finally turned toward me fully. Tears were already gathering in her eyes now, but something strange happened inside me seeing them. Months ago they would have destroyed me. Now they barely moved anything at all. "Adrian, I can explain." I shook my head once. "No, you can confess. Those are different things." Her composure broke harder after that. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said shakily. "He understood me when you stopped seeing me." There it was, the justification. The emotional rewrite people create after betrayal. Ethan looked away toward the windows while my attorney quietly took notes. I stayed calm. "I worked 60-hour weeks to build our life," I replied softly. "I coached Mason's baseball team. I stayed awake during Ava's fevers. I paid every bill on time. I loved you when you hated yourself. Don't stand there pretending you vanished because I stopped seeing you." She cried openly now. "I was lonely. So you sold us for hotel rooms and hidden bank accounts." Her eyes closed painfully. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I finally saw the truth clearly. Not the affair. Not the lies. Her. Broken. Weak. Lost inside her own selfishness. Damian Mercer didn't destroy my marriage alone. He simply found cracks Celeste willingly opened herself. Vanessa Mercer finally spoke again, voice sharp as glass. "My husband was arrested this morning." Celeste's head snapped upward instantly. "What?" Ethan slid another newspaper, clipping across the table. "Federal investigation. Fraud charges. Asset seizure pending. Mercer Biodine stock collapsing by the hour." The blood completely vanished from Celeste's face now. "No," she whispered. Vanessa stood slowly. "He used all of you, and now he'll burn alone." Then she looked directly at me. "I'm sorry for what this cost your family." She left without another word. The room stayed silent afterward, except for Celeste quietly crying to both hands. Finally, she looked up at me again, shattered completely now. "Please," she whispered, "don't do this to the kids." That sentence almost broke me because despite everything, my children still love their mother. And part of me always would too. Maybe not romantically anymore. Maybe never again. But you cannot spend 14 years building a life beside someone and erase every piece of human feeling overnight. This isn't about punishment, I said quietly. It's about consequences. She stared at me helplessly. "Do you hate me?" I thought carefully before answering. "No," I admitted honestly. "That's the worst part. I probably should. But mostly, I just don't recognize you anymore." Tears rolled silently down her face. "I made a mistake." I shook my head slowly. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a campaign. The silence after that felt endless. Finally, my attorney pushed the separation agreement across the table. Asset protections, custody structure, Financial disclosures. Everything clean. Controlled. Final. Celeste looked at the papers like they weighed 1,000 pounds. If I sign this, she whispered, it ends. I stood slowly, adjusting my coat. No, I answered calmly. It ended in that hotel elevator. This just documents the body. Then I walked out, not because I wanted to hurt her, because staying longer would hurt me. Outside, rain drifted softly across the city streets again, almost exactly like the night the old security guard first touched my arm. Funny how life circles moments back around. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. A message from Ethan. You good? I looked up at the gray skyline for a long moment before replying. Not good, but free. And for the first time in months, that felt close enough. I drove home where my kids waited with homework spread across the kitchen table and cartoons playing too loudly in the background. Ava ran into my arms first. Mason asked if we could order pizza. Normal life. Real life. The only life that mattered now. Later that night after they slept, I sat alone on the back porch staring into darkness while cold wind moved through the trees. Pain still lived inside me. Probably always would in some form. Betrayal changes people permanently. But so does survival. And somewhere between discovering my wife in another man's arms and walking away from the ruins she created, I became someone new. Stronger. Quieter. Harder to fool. My name is Adrian Vale. I'm 43 years old. And if there's one thing this story taught me, it's this. The most dangerous man in the world is not the man who loses everything. It's the man who loses everything and stays calm enough to rebuild anyway.